In this Elden Ring video, we're going to be going through all the magic spells you can acquire during the closed network test. These are obviously but a fraction that will be available in the full game, but let's get into what these are. First up are the sorceries, or called Glintstone Sorceries in Elden Ring, or at least some of them are. And the very first one is called Glintstone Pebble. This is one of the starting spells you begin the Enchanted Knight with. And it's kind of just like your soul arrow type spell. It shoots a projectile. You can actually hit R1 again very quickly and sort of weave a couple of these spells together, a few of these spells to deal damage very, very quickly. And it has a rather long range and a pretty fast cast time. This is kind of your bread and butter spell against trash enemies, and you'll probably use it in situations where enemies move very quickly and you can't hit them. Don't want to go into any spoilers there, but it's a lot harder to land slower moving spells against quick moving enemies, so you may want to use this for certain enemies as well. The other spell you begin the game with in the Enchanted Knight is the Carian Piecer. This is sort of like a sword spell that comes out as a thrust when you cast it. It does very, very high damage. And it makes this class very, very good in terms of melee combat because you can get in close and hit with Carian Piecer, or you can back away and hit with Glintstone Pebble, all without equipping a weapon besides your staff. So you could have a shield in one hand, a staff in the other, block, and then Carian Piecer for high damage. Works very well against tough-to-kill enemies and can deal substantial damage. The next spell is called Glintstone Stars. This sort of shoots like 3 Glintstone Pebbles at once that track. I don't know if they're actual pebbles that they shoot, but it shoots 3 at once. It costs twice the mana of Glintstone Pebble, so it's more mana efficient or MP efficient if you're, trying to conserve mana. But obviously it's a bit overkill for weak enemies, so you're going to try and avoid using this on trash and try and use this on the medium to hard to kill enemies to conserve MP. MP isn't as hard to come by in Elden Ring as in other Souls games because you get your flasks replenished quite regularly, especially when you kill hard enemies. So I wouldn't worry too much about conserving mana, and you can always shift your flasks to more MP regain if you're having trouble keeping up, with enough mana. The next spell is called Glintstone Arc. This sort of shoots a wave of blue magic out that pierces enemies and has kind of a wider area of effect than the Glintstone Pebble. It doesn't hit in an AoE, but it hits in an arc kind of in front of you. So it can clip more enemies if they're not right on top of each other. It can hit them a little bit more spread out, but it's not a huge arc. I didn't find it super effective when I was playing, although it does pierce enemies, so it's good for those moments where you have like a large group of enemies and you can hit into the front of them and they can continue through to the back of them. The next spell is Magic Bubble. This shoots like a bunch of projectile globes out in front of you that sort of hang out in the air and then explode. It's very hard to time to use this ability. You have to anticipate where an enemy is going to be, or an enemy that's very stationary is good, or maybe a very big enemy that can't move out of the way. Otherwise, this is not a spell that you'll use all that often because it's kind of difficult to use regularly. The next one is the Meteorite spell. This one is kind of interesting. You put your staff down sort of Gandalf style and you shoot 3 meteorites out that kind of go very, very spread. It's very hard to hit something with all 3 of these meteorites. In fact, I'm not sure you'll ever be able to. And because the spell has a very long cast time, you have to be very careful when you use it or you can get interrupted very easily. So it's very difficult to use, but it's very high damage. And the last sorcery is Briars of Sin. This spell you actually hurt yourself and set some of the hemorrhage status effect build up on your bar. And you can spam it 3 times in a row, taking more and more damage off you, and it creates an AoE around you over and over and over that deals damage. It's very difficult to use in my opinion because that first attack is much slower than the subsequent ones. And if enemies are that close to you, usually they're going to hit you and interrupt you before you can use it. But if you get good at it, then there's an opportunity to AoE enemies down. Moving along to incantations, these are effectively miracles and pyromancies from the Souls games combined into one category. These all scale off faith, whereas the sorcery scale off intelligence. So if you're a faith class, then you would look into using these. They also require a sacred seal to cast instead of a staff, and there are 2 different ones in the closed network test. So you're either going to use these if you're playing the champion class or you're playing the prophet class. Both of them start with sacred seals. You can actually get sacred seals after you finish the demo. So if you didn't start with one of these 2 classes and you want to test out these, make sure you finish the demo, and then you can go pick these up or cast them with your sacred seal. The first incantation is Heal. This is the one prophets begin with. They also begin with Beast Claw, but we'll talk about this one first. This is a huge heal. It costs a lot of MP, but it heals you a significant amount. And it takes a little bit of time to cast, as you might imagine. So if you like healing, or you want to be able to use your MP to heal when you want, this is great to have in your rotation of spells because it allows you to go like 4 flasks that recover MP, and then if you need to heal, you can just go ahead and use 1 spell to heal. It's kind of a higher risk way to play, and you need to be a little bit better at the game because you can't heal as quickly as you can chugging a potion that heals health. But it's a great way to, skew your potions towards regenerating mana and not having to, waste them on healing potions if you are playing as a mage. The next incantation is Beast Claw. Again, if you begin with Prophet, this is one you're going to begin with. This is a very, very high damaging spell that hits in a frontal cone, and it goes through targets, not unlike Glintstone Arc. So you can take out tons of enemies at once. It's very good in packs. You can use it on horseback. You can use it against bosses. It is arguably one of the best spells in the closed network test. You can't get it until you finish the network test with any other class. So if you really like this spell, then you're going to need to play with Prophet. The one downside to this spell is that it doesn't work in water. For whatever reason, maybe it's a ground-based spell and water is not considered earth or something. It doesn't work in water, so you need to lure enemies out of shallow water onto the land in order to deal damage to them. The next spell is Cure Poison. This does exactly what it says. It cures poison status from you. There's only one enemy type, I think, in the closed network test that sets the poison status effect, so this isn't super useful in the closed network test. The next spell is Urgent Heal. This spell heals you for significantly less than Heal does, but it costs a lot less FP. Of the two, Heal and Urgent Heal, I strongly recommend Heal. It heals you for significantly more. I feel like the MP cost is, you get way more heal for the MP cost. So you can use this if you want, but I highly recommend using heal instead. The Rejection incantation will remind players of Emit Force from the Souls games. Basically, it creates an AoE field around you that knocks enemies back. You can charge it up to knock them back even further and hit in a larger range. But this is kind of like an AoE knockback. I didn't really find myself using this much because when I was surrounded by enemies, I usually was dead, or I needed to kill them, or I just didn't put myself in those situations. But you can use it to effectively get out of a pickle if you have it slotted. The Flame of Frenzy is an interesting spell. It sort of shoots fire projectiles forward kind of somewhat randomly, but at relatively the same range, kind of like in a line. And it does very high damage to the targets, but it also sets some madness buildup on your character. When your madness buildup bar reaches full, it drains your stamina and your health, so you want to make sure that this doesn't happen to you. So you're not going to spam it super often, otherwise you're going to hurt yourself. But the buildup doesn't happen so much that you really have to worry about it too much. As long as you're not just mashing it over and over and over, you should be okay. Litany of Proper Death is sort of like a frontal cone AoE that deals significant damage to undead characters. The vast majority of enemies in the closed network test are not undead, so there isn't a huge use for it that I've found. Maybe one of the bosses or something that I haven't tried it on, it works well on, but I did not find this to be super effective in the closed network test. Probably has far more application in the actual version of the game. The next incantation is Oh Flame. This will remind players of the combustion spell from Dark Souls 2. Kind of snap your fingers and a little bit of flame comes out in front of you. You can spam this very, very quickly to deal fire damage very fast. Has a rather short range, but it can be cast repeatedly, so it has application inside melee range, but not much more than that. The next incantation is the Feast Upon Flame spell. This is effectively Fireball from the Souls series. Just lets you fling a ball of fire. It has pretty good range. You can fling it from very, very far away. So if your aim is very good, you'll be able to hit targets with a fireball from very long distance. The next incantation is Dragonfire. This is summons a big dragon head that shoots fire in a huge cone in front of you. The only class or only character that I found that can actually use this spell is the champion. It comes as his starter incantation. But I have not found it anywhere else in the network test, so it leads me to believe that if you want to use this spell, that you need to pick the champion class. It's very, very good. It also works really well on horseback because you can sort of move backward and spin while you're casting it and line it up at the last second to deal massive, massive damage. And you can keep holding it down in order to just keep burning enemies. The last spell is Greyoll's Roar, which is another spell that summons a dragon's head and does a giant roar. It has a very long cast time that deals substantial damage to anything in front of you. And it also decreases the attack power of the target that you hit. So it would be not bad to debuff a boss with this at the beginning of fight before facing them. That's all the magic spells for the closed network test. I hope you enjoyed this video and you learned something about the spells, so you can figure out what you want to use during the network test, or plan ahead for other play sessions if maybe you missed some of these in your first one. And we'll keep you guys updated with more videos on Elden Ring. So what did you guys think of the magic spells? Are they what you'd hope they'd be? Are you disappointed that some of them are recycled, or are you just excited that how great they look? Let us know in the comments below.